What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hive Prometheus. 2 uploads back to back. You're right. I said I was trying to be consistent about getting these videos out, and I'm going to do that. So today we're going over list building for Vanguard Onslaught. Just like yesterday, I'm going to show you a classic take on Vanguard Onslaught's build for things that are being successful right now in today's meta, and then I'm going to show you sort of my fusion, mix-up, mash list that I've had from months back, which funny enough, does end up looking sort of what has evolved into the preceding meta for things that are working in Vanguard. So let's go ahead and throw us over to the first list here, and we'll go over the traditional take first. All right, so here going over a more classic Vanguard build. What's sort of evolving right now is we're still keeping that flying Hive Tyrant. It's fast, it has access to advance and charge, it's able to give a enemy unit within 12 inches on a 2-up -1 attacks, which can really help the clapback for something like your Hormigons or your Gene Stealers. Giving it Chameleonic at least ensures that it always counts as having stealth and being in cover, so even when it's slightly exposed, on the off chance that you didn't perfectly pivot his wings to hide behind a footprint, he can be slightly hidden. We've actually dropped down from having the triple Broodlord and Gene Stealer build to having more of the 2 times, partially because it's just a lot of points. It's 230 points for that brick of wounds, and specifically here we're leaning towards having more of a little bit of a toughness stat check with the triple Tyranid here in the list. Going further down, we do have Death Leaper. He gives a -1 leadership check in your opponent's command phase at a -1 if anything is below starting strength, which if Death Leaper's within 6 inches, hopefully there is something. He either went into melee something, or from a preceding fight, if he survived, he can proc that ability. Neuro Tyrant is in this list to give that -1 global debuff for leadership checks when you do Shadow on the Warp, and it's just a slight buff to give them Hunting Grounds. Hunting Grounds is here specifically for all the armies that have the abilities to go into reserve and come back. On a 2-up, anytime they come onto the battlefield, they need to take a Battle Shock check. That Battle Shock check, if they fail, can also synergize with having the Neurolictor in the list. If the Neurolictor is within 12 inches of a battle shocked enemy, they're +1 to wound and they're -1 to hit. This also synergizes well with Surprise Assault. Surprise Assault, you can proc this in the shooting phase or the fight phase. It forces a battle shock on an enemy. If they pass it, they're just -1 to hit, but if they also fail that battle shock check, they are also -1 to wound. So this stratagem, along with the subtraction of attacks from the Hive Tyrant ability, is great synergy to kind of keep your Gene Stealers alive. Similarly, if you're trying to single out a character that is giving a buff for 1 CP, you can proc Assassin Beasts on your Gene Stealer brick. It makes it so that all of your attacks are the precision ability, so that you can allocate all of their 45 attacks to the character first, and then there's a cascading effect of the wounds would then flow onto the retinue afterwards. I love Assassin Beasts. It's very consistent, makes it so that you're effectively always going to get that character if you throw a Gene Stealer squad into it. I don't necessarily know if there's anything here that I would want to use Seeded Broods with. Putting something into reserve and then bringing it in as if it was a turn earlier, you can potentially turn 1 Deep Strike. Maybe putting one of the Gene Stealer squads coming in from a board edge to make a 9-inch charge, but I think they're better just staying on the board with the 8-inch scout and the 8-inch move, and then they advance and charge. So I don't necessarily think that's what you're putting in there. Maybe what you're putting in there is one of the Gargoyles and one of the Hormigons, and they can come onto a board edge before a movement and then screen and potentially make a charge out of Deep Strike. Bivor is here in the list, same as always. He is giving us the ability to hold our backfield and then seed Spore Mines, potentially against enemy melee armies. The Spore Mine allows a 6-inch aura of you cannot begin or end advances within 6. They also can give you 3 of the 18 objectives in the Pariah Nexus deck, either area denial, engage on all fronts, or behind enemy lines by seeding that Spore Mine. Gene Stealers are here to go with the Broodlords. You know what they do. They've got 40 attacks on the 10 bodies. I know in the picture specifically I don't say 10 times Gene Stealers, but that is the cost for 150. We've got 2 Lictors here, along with the Neurolictor and Death Leaper. We've got 4 Infiltrators, so we have a lot of action monkeys outside of just using the battle line. And then the Von Ryan Sleepers here do have an infiltrate, but they don't scout. I think that is also good to potentially tie up the front lines of your enemy just as a roadblock to annoy people. They're not necessarily there to deal damage. They're there to be another roadblock. And then here we have the trifecta. We have triple Tyranid effects, 1 with an acid spray and 2 with the rupture cannons. This is just ensuring that you're able to deal with those high toughness targets like tanks that the Gene Stealers and the Gaunts and other things wouldn't be able to deal with, and the Hive Tyrant wouldn't be able to reach out and touch in a single turn of movement. And then the acid effects is there as a deterrent for anything that's going to come out and shoot or melee your Gene Stealers, potentially after using the hypersensory cilia stratagem to get a reactive move 6. Similarly, you can put unseen lurkers onto any of your lone op characters to make them 6-inch lone op instead of 12-inch lone op, and similarly it will give 18-inch lone op to a Vanguard Invader unit if they are not already a lone operative unit. So you can put this on the Hive Tyrant. It makes it so that he is untargetable outside of 18. That potentially could save his life against things like Reaper Executioners and Lancers going into Space Marines. So and then last of which, Invisible Hunter is the 6th stratagem that I haven't referenced yet. So up to 2 Vanguard Invader units or 1 Tyranid infantry unit specifically, you can remove from the board and put into Deep Strike. The other build that I've seen working here is running a 6-man squad of Zoanthropes, potentially with Neuro Tyrant. That way they are an infantry squad. You can pick them up off the board and you can redeploy them. Sort of similar to how Ultramarine Vanguard is using those Devastator Centurions to pick them off the field, choose a perfect firing line, and then obliterate something, and then hopefully grabbing an angle so that there is no firing repercussions on the preceding turn. So that is the general gist of this list. Let's go ahead and roll over to sort of the Fusion Monster Mash Vanguard list that I had been running, which some of the things will be very similar. All right, going into the second list here, we still have that chameleonic flying Hive Tyrant. We have triple Broodlord now instead of that double Broodlord. I liked the utility of just having the ability to put one of those Broodlord squads into reserve and then either potentially seated broods them turn 1 or hold them in reserve for a counter charge on something if one of those squads of Gene Stealers and the Broodlord got in trouble. I do have double Lictor and a Neuro Lictor. I don't have Death Leaper just because those points have been reserved for that third Broodlord here. And then triple squad of Gene Stealers to go with those Broodlords. I do have a Biovore, and then here's kind of where we get into the Monster Mash bit. About 50% of this list, roughly, is just monsters. So I like having double Exocrine. I think going into Marines or a lot of 3-wound enemies, we need the AP3, we need the 36-inch range, and we need the damage 3. So I think Exocrines are still very good. I like running Molochs. I've heard from some people that they've kind of fallen off. I think as the meta tunes itself to be more MSU dominant, the ability to deep strike Molochs outside of 9, but they proc their ability. Subterranean Assault actually does mortal wounds to anything within 12 on a 2-up, and then on a 5-up it does 3 flat mortal wounds and it forces a battle shock. On a 1, it does nothing. They are also Vanguard Invaders, so you can choose those two to redeploy. And generally they have a lot of attacks, and I think they benefit a lot from surprise assaults. They're 16 attacks hitting on... There's 16 attacks with their claws, hitting on 3s, strength 8, AP2 for 1 damage. It'd be +1 to hit with surprise assault, so hitting on 2s, pretty cool. Also a relatively tough body, 14 wounds. I don't know. I don't think it's that horrible. I'm looking at this list now. I might actually run this for fun before I run in my invasion lists. And in the list, we still do have one of those Tyranid effects with Rupture Cannon, just as some consistency to reach out and touch those tanks, along with the Exocrines to proc symbiotic targeting to reroll 1s in shooting. Potentially using Surprise Assault in shooting gives the Exocrines the ability to move ahead on 2s, and same with the Rupture Cannon, and then you reroll those 1s. That's honestly some great consistency. So hopefully today I've given you guys a little bit of the reasoning behind the units and the stratagem support and the units that synergize with the abilities in Vanguard Onslaught. And tomorrow I'm probably going to be reviewing either Synaptic Nexus or Assimilation Swarm. I'm just going to keep rolling through the detachments until we're all finished. So I hope you found some of this helpful today, and I'll catch you next time on Hive Prometheus.